This is a story from the mountains of Okinawa, a place known for its longevity and natural beauty. High up in these mountains, nestled between emerald green hills and clear skies, lived an elderly woman. Unlike most at her age, her spirit was anything but frail. Even as the years piled up, she carried a smile on her face and a spring in her step. Her name was Aiko, which means beloved child, and indeed she was a beloved figure in the village. Now, over the years, many youngsters from the city would come to Aiko seeking her wisdom. They'd ask, "How do you stay so vibrant at 72?" And Aiko, with her eyes twinkling, would always answer, "My secret is simple. I wake up early, tend my garden, and greet the day with a smile." While this might sound ordinary, it was in this simplicity that her secret lay. One breezy afternoon, a young man sat at her feet. He was a writer who'd come to pen Ico's story. He asked, "What did you do before you found your Ikigai, your reason for being?" Aiko closed her eyes, lost in thought. "Ah, that seems like a distant dream," she began, her voice soft yet steady. "I was once just like you, full of dreams and hopes for the future. But life took an unexpected turn, and I found myself alone and unsure of my path." As she spoke, a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves outside, carrying with it the sweet scent of blooming jasmine. When Aiko was young, she was known for her infectious laughter and warm heart. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with her presence. Her days were filled with the simple joys of life, tending to her garden, cooking meals for her family, and spending time with her loved ones. Life was good, or so she thought. Then, as if struck by lightning, everything changed. Her husband, who had been the anchor of their lives, suddenly fell ill and passed away. Grief washed over Aiko like a tsunami, leaving her shaken and lost. The vibrancy that had been her trademark dimmed, and the laughter faded from her lips. Days turned into weeks, and Aiko found herself enveloped in a deep, dark pit of despair. The world around her seemed to lose its color, and the melody of life turned into a mournful tune. She couldn't understand why she was still alive. Why should she go on when the one she loved was gone? This question echoed in her heart, day in and day out, turning her life into a living hell. Lost in her grief, Aiko neglected everything. The garden she once took pride in became overgrown, the house filled with dust, and her own needs took a back seat. The friends and neighbors who had always been there for her worriedly exchanged glances. No one knew how to reach Aiko or pull her out of the abyss of sadness she'd fallen into. Just when everyone thought there was no hope of rescuing her from the clutches of depression, a glimmer of light appeared on the horizon. It was none other than Ico's childhood friend, who had a unique plan to help her pull through this difficult time. The moment Yumi laid her eyes on Ico, she knew that words wouldn't be enough to lift her spirits. She had to do something extraordinary. So one day, while visiting Aiko, Yumi brought along a small packet of flower seeds. She placed them on the table beside Aiko, who was lost in her thoughts. "These are special seeds," Yumi said softly, breaking the silence. They need to be planted, watered, and cared for just like you need to care for yourself. Aiko looked at the seeds, then back at Yumi, her eyes filled with confusion. But Yumi, understanding Aiko's state of mind, gently coaxed her to plant the seeds in her neglected garden. "Will it really help?" Aiko asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Only one way to find out," Yumi replied with a comforting smile. With a mix of curiosity and skepticism, Aiko followed Yumi to her garden. It was a tangled mess of weeds and withered plants, a reflection of Aiko's own state of mind. Together, they cleared a small patch of land, dug the soil, and carefully planted the seeds. Aiko felt a sense of purpose for the first time in months. The act of nurturing life, however tiny, gave her a reason to get out of bed each day. As the days passed, Aiko began to notice tiny green sprouts pushing through the soil. It was a small victory, but it filled her with a sense of accomplishment. She started watering the plants, singing softly to them as she did, and to her surprise, the plants thrived. The garden, once a symbol of neglect, was now coming back to life, mirroring the reawakening of Aiko's spirit. But it wasn't just the garden that bloomed. Something within Aiko shifted as well. She began taking small steps to care for herself, eating nourishing meals, getting some much-needed rest, and facing the day with a semblance of her old self. The sight of her garden filled with life sparked a new purpose in her heart. Aiko remembered who she was, the woman with a passion for gardening and a heart full of warmth. She started inviting the neighborhood kids to her garden, sharing her knowledge and love for nature. The children, in turn, brought laughter and joy back into Aiko's life. Their innocent questions and enthusiastic chatter filled her days with a renewed sense of meaning. As Aiko watched the children playing and learning in her garden, she realized that she had found a new reason to live. It wasn't just about the flowers or the vegetables. It was about the connection she was making with the next generation. This realization brought a smile back to her face and a song back to her heart. Years flew by like the changing seasons, each bringing its own beauty to Aiko's garden and her life. The garden became a hub of activity, a place where the elderly shared wisdom and the young learned about nature. Aiko, with her infectious laughter and green thumb, was at the center of it all. The purpose she found in her garden and in sharing its bounty with her community gave her life a new lease. It wasn't always easy. There were days when the weight of her loss threatened to pull her back into the darkness. But Aiko had learned that the best way to honor her husband's memory was to keep living, to keep loving, and to keep sharing. As she stood in her garden, surrounded by the fruits of her labor and the company of friends and neighbors, Aiko knew that she had found her Ikigai, her reason for being. The secret to her ageless spirit, she realized, lay not in any magical elixir or mystical practice, but in the simple yet profound truth of living a life filled with purpose, connection, and a deep sense of gratitude for the gift of each new day. She understood that true longevity came not from chasing longevity itself, but from embracing the richness and meaning of each moment. So, what can we learn from Ico's story? What's the secret to finding our own Ikigai? Perhaps it lies in the small, intentional steps we take each day, the connections we nurture, and the purpose we find in sharing our gifts with the world. Just like Aiko, we may find that our reason for being is not in some grand distant goal, but in the simple act of living a life that honors our passions, our values, and the legacy we want to leave behind. As we navigate the twists and turns of life, may we remember to tend to our gardens, both literally and metaphorically, and to find joy in the process of nurturing life, ourselves, and those around us.